Good evening. I'm Bruno Borges, and I'm here to talk to you about web development using Scala, Wicket, and Java EE. First, introducing myself. I've been working with Java since 2000. I like to speak at conferences, mostly in Brazil because I cannot afford for tickets myself, but I could go to ApacheCon a few times, and it was great. I used to evangelize for Apache Camel and Apache Wicket. Yesterday I gave an Apache Camel talk, which brought some attention on Twitter. If someone was there, you know why. I joined Oracle recently, which it's kind of weird being talking about Apache frameworks, but those talks were proposed before I joined the company. I live in São Paulo, have a golden retriever, marriage. Yeah, I am a hiker and gamer. I like to hike when I'm not playing video games. So the agenda here is about web development, right? I don't know who here were at this Smackdown on Monday night, led by Marcus. None of you? Okay. So there was a Smackdown for web frameworks. They had like Play, Java server faces, and so on, but no Wicket. It's okay. I'm gonna give you an overview about Wicket. If you, how many of you do not know Wicket? Okay, cool. All right. I'm also going to introduce you a little bit about Scala and how to use Scala to build a dynamic specific language, a domain specific language for web development, and how to use the Java EE platform to get all the resources, all the things that we need, like database connections, mail session, and so on. And I'll introduce you to a project that I've been working on. It's called Gamboa. It's actually a Maven archetype to use all that stuff together. So starting with web development, is there any web designer here? Designer, just designer? No? Okay. So there's this fight between web designers and web developers. You know, web developers, they like to code. Web designers like to design. They have a different mindset on their minds. They use different tools, different methods, different processes. So thinking about the designing process of a web designer, we see they use wireframing tools like Balsamiq. Then they go to the Photoshop and they draw the page. They draw how it's going to look like, but just an image of the page. And then they do what we call the HTML slicing. They slice the image into pieces of JPGs and CSS and all that stuff. Then they actually build the HTML. So we get the prototype of the website. If you go to like templatemonster.com, you get a lot of templates, just HTML. So what else they do? They preview in the browser that HTML. You know, how many of you have worked with struts before? What happens when you change the HTML with struts? The designer cannot preview in the browser anymore, right? So also thinking about all that stuff, I came up with these designing processes. I think about websites being built by using two types of designing processes. One is bottom-up, when you have the functional requirements, like a page with panel on the left, a menu, a navigation bar, a form, a database with CRUDs. So you come from the data, and then you start building an app, which is quite good for Java Service Faces, for instance, or Oracle EDF, or any framework that connects to the data, and you actually build based on the data. And then we have top-down. The designer makes a prototype, and then we start mixing server-side code or client-side code on that HTML. That's what I call it top-down, because we came from a functional prototype, a very, very pixel-perfect version of the website. And then we start adding server-side stuff. Well, I realized that there is no web framework able to do both. It's quite impossible. I mean, productively speaking, it's impossible, right? You can do that, but it's not easy. So then we have these two differences between pixel-perfect websites and functional websites. Then because thinking about those marketing websites that it's like a call for action for Coca-Cola or something like that. So thinking about pixel-perfect websites, the perfect frameworks until now are basically PHP, Ruby on Rails, and Python, or simply JavaScript with REST, which is really good too for that. What about functional websites? Well, functional websites, again, they are bottom-up design strategy, and Java Server Face is really good on that. GWT, Vaadin, Wicket, and a few others. What about pixel-perfect websites in the Java world? We can use JSP and servlets. We can use Struts 2, Tapestry, Wicket. We can use Java Server Faces if we work more with facelets. We can use Play, Lift, and so on. What if we could have a framework that doesn't force us to totally modify the work that the designer did prototyping the website? So that's actually the point of this talk here. Pixel-perfect websites are always top-down. You cannot start, like, you can do, in the end, have a pixel-perfect website building bottom-up from Java Server Faces, for instance. But your designer will have a lot of work mixing CSS and so on the page, and probably he will touch some server-side codes, and then the developer will have to fix that, and then you go back and forth, right? It sucks. So we have actually two kinds of markup here. We have the imperative markup and the declarative markup. When you think about imperative markup, it's like struts do, what struts do, or what Java Server Faces do, what other framework? PHP does that, right? You have to put server-side code on the page and screw everything up. So what happened when you do that? The designer he loses the ability to preview in the browser the prototype that he made before. And what happens if he needs to change the layout of the page? He cannot do that change anymore using the prototype. He has to use the actual modified page with all the server-side code in it. And then you come back to all that thing about mixing up server-side, client-side code. So what about declarative markup? We have Wicket, we have Tapestry, we have Facelets, and I don't know any other framework, but there might be someone out there. What those frameworks do is that they really don't change that much. There are some changes that can happen, but the concept of the framework is to actually use the HTML as it was during the designing process, the prototyping process. So this way, programmers and developers, they are happily ever after. They can work together, one doing the layout, the other one doing the programming stuff. And the customer are happy to see statically how the website is becoming. He can just open the HTML file. He doesn't have to run a server or even the designer. So Apache Wicket. Apache Wicket is a framework that takes an HTML like this one and then just declaring which components will be controlled by the server-side framework, the server side of the system, to manipulate the data, to manipulate attributes, behaviors, and so on. But for every time you have a page on the client side, on the HTML, you have to have server-side code. So that's why Wicket requires you to build a class, Java class, to control all that page and those components that are in it. So here we have the class that follows the same name as the HTML, And it's a Java class extending web page. And in the constructor, we just add all the components that we have declared on the HTML file, like a label, a form, lists, and buttons, and so on. For every component on Wicket, you can attach a model. And with the model, you can have dynamic data being provided to that component. So in this case, we have the user object as the model for the form. So whenever the component name wants to display which data it has to display, it will say to the compound property model there, give me the property name, which is my name for the component, of the object. So the text field, for instance, will ask the model of the form to get the name from the user, and then it will display that on the HTML. The cool thing about Wicket is that it's easy to create components. It's just Java, and if you want something client-side, HTML or JavaScript, you can do that doing pairing with HTML and Java and some JavaScript on top of the HTML. So for instance, you can do like a Google Maps panel like this one with those 5 lines. Actually, the Google Maps between the div is optional. It's just to say, here we'll come up with the Google Maps component. So if we want to build a component and then share that with other projects, we just put that component in a jar file, and then the developer just have to import, and that's it. Okay, so it has a very close programming model with the Swing applications. What else? We have a jQuery. It was recent, applied by the Wicket team as the engine for client-side JavaScript on the framework. So all the core components that require any JavaScript, they're gonna use jQuery. We have page composition by events or panels or borders. So we can have like that JMaps panel over there, that's a panel. So we can just plug in whenever we want. Recently, one of the committers added support for CDI, and working last night, I was just updating my archetype to come up with that. Back button support, it has control for state, the history of your page flow, and lots of components. There is a community called Wicket Stuff, where you can provide, it's on GitHub, you can use the components over there, or you can share your components. It's really huge. There are more than 50 components in there. The Scala component, I've been contributing to it with the Scala DSL language for Wicket. So anybody here that feels interested about the framework can join the team on GitHub. It's just drop an email at the mailing list and people will give you access. Scala. Scala language. So, quick introduction. It's object-oriented, it's functional, and it is statically typed. It doesn't seem to, but it is. The compiler of Scala is a little bit magical about this. So in this case, we have foo equals 8, then we try to assign a string, and then we have a compile mismatch. It runs on top of the JVM. It is very extensible. If some of you are aware of the Pimp My Library pattern, you can easily extend the core Scala library with your own features, however you want. So that's why it's easy to define DSLs. So functions. In Scala, we have the ability to exchange objects that are actually functions that were announced. It was announced at the keynote in Java 1 here that we are going to have Lambda expressions in the Java language. So what we are seeing here is basically what we will get on Java 8. So it's quite cool. It looks like ugly in the beginning, but then you get used to it. It's like JavaScript callbacks. Some constructions. Scala gives you the ability to do some easy, straightforward things that like Ruby does. So I want a list of 1 to 9. I just express that. Give me a list of 1 to 9. And if I want to iterate, I just use the for each, which enables me to offer a function to be evaluated for each element. That was one of the demonstrations of the Lambda expressions in Java at the keynote. Cool things about lists and maps. Here we have 2 lists, A, B, and 3 lists, A, B, and C. A is 1, 2, B 3, 4, and then we put all together with list C, those double commas over there. Maps. In this case, people tend to think that the numbers over here are the indexes, but they are actually the keys of the map. So you can use whatever you want. You can use a string or another object. So going back to Wicket, like I said, Wicket, the programming model of Wicket is very similar to Swing. You'll have to create panels, add components to them, and override methods that will give you behavior or events, and so on. So it reminds of Swing. We have to use a lot of anonymous inner classes, for instance, because of the listeners and events, which is quite good for a functional programming model. That's why I think that Wicket will have a very good I think the usage of developers of Wicket will increase after Java 8 because I'm sure they will come up with ideas to take advantage of Lambda expressions or closures because it is easier to develop using that to override the behaviors of components. Well, until there, Scala wins. So the point between integrating Wicket and Scala in this case is that we can move from a very verbose class like this one, and we can just get few less lines in this case. It's the same class, same functionality, same components, but it has less code in there. Now, if we do the domain-specific language for Wicket using Scala, we get something like this, which is even less verbose. And I think it's easier to understand the code. You just have a form, you declare components to it, you give them IDs, and you give a behavior. For instance, the form there, it gets a function expression that it calls the onSubmit method, which will call the service, the stateless session bean, and then we'll update the data. So about Java EE, where it fits in this case. Well, with Java EE, we can develop using enterprise Java beans. We can use CDI. We can use JPA and JTA, bean validation, and JOX-RS. Those are the main features of Java EE that can be easily used in web applications in this case. And there are a lot of things like in this integration that I've come up. It comes with the embedded plugin for GlassFish. It comes already with a data source configured for you, so you can work on JPA. No more web XML. And Scala has this great feature. It's called bean property expression. So you don't have to code any more getters and setters. Scala will generate that for you. The compiler will do that for you. So let's say I want to configure my application, the framework, Wicket, on the web container. I just create this Scala class with a few annotations, and then my application is able to be run on the servlet container. Really no more web XML in this case. And what about the getters and setters? If I have a property like ID, I just give the bean property, and then I get the get ID, set ID, and so on. So I can interrupt between Scala and Java if I want, if I have to, because in this case, it is a Java bean pattern being applied to a Scala class. So, I'm sorry. In this case, it's a trait. It's a kind of an interface in Java, but it has the ability to offer default methods that are going to be implemented in Java 8 again, and it's also can also be used to provide lots of cool stuff. It's hard to describe. It's not easy. We have to spend maybe 3-4 slides on this. But in here, what I'm doing is, user extends identifiable. We'll have the ID attribute, the primary key, and I'm going to add 2 more attributes in this case, name and email, and it's going to be an entity on JPA. So putting all these together, what can we have? We can have an architecture for rapid web application development that I gave the name of Gamboa Project. So if you follow that link, you're going to end on my GitHub account at the Gamboa Project repository. So you can start working and see how it goes. If you think you can offer me some feedbacks, I can add the features that you want. What I'm going to show you is about the Gamboa archetype now at the demo. So the Gamboa archetype comes with the Scala DSL for Wicket that is part of the Wicket stuff repository. It has 3 types of archetypes. It comes with Java EE archetype, one archetype, a base archetype for Spring that it can be split in 2, one for MongoDB and another one for CouchDB. And the directory structure is a little bit different from Maven because the point is to have a more simple, straightforward directory structure like Ruby on Rails does, like PHP can do. So we don't need actually to follow that Maven convention in this case. So this is the structure of the Gamboa project that people get when they actually create a project. On the source folder, we just put all the Scala code that we have. On the config folder, we have the domains.xml for GlassFish. We have a few files for properties if we want, and we have the template for email sending for sending emails using Velocity. It already comes with Velocity integrated in this case. So all the templates that you have to send, just put in this folder, and then you can easily use them. Yes.
Don't test.
Not yet. That's yeah. So yeah, I have a few things on my roadmap that I'm trying to catch up. Yeah, no test folder. Damn. So sorry. Yeah, I'm not very good on TDD. I'm bad on that. So on the layout page, on the layout folder, we put all the HTML and CSS and JavaScript. That is the folder that the designer will be working on. So the developer works on source and the designer works on layout. So they can open the HTML, preview, whatever they want. They do not have to touch on any server-side code and vice versa. And we have the POM XML for Maven. So let me show you one demo that I could make it work a few minutes ago here at the beginning. So here's the group birthday project that I created. You see there's only source, config, and layout. But the only thing the developer has to do on the layout page is to actually give the wicket attributes on each component that will be controlled on the server side of the page. So for instance, I want the login page here. I can actually preview the page. Well, Eclipse is not that good on previewing, but I check here the form. So here's the form, wicket. ID form, and all the components that are in it, I can just give them attributes just like the ID attribute that the designer used to reference that component. And on the server side of this page, I have all this code that gives me the login button, the create account button, and the forgot password link. So it all uses functions to give the behavior of what will happen when the user clicks on the button. The font size is pretty bad for you guys over there. Sorry. Okay, now it's easier. Wow. Okay. All right. So for instance, I want to mount the login page. I just use the Wicket annotations feature. And then I want to create a form. I just call form to deal with the user and the same attribute that is on the page. From this point on, the developer doesn't have to touch on the HTML again. All the server-side code will be done in this class. Yes?
You have a fast way to jump in the Scala code and HTML?
Like a plugin for Eclipse? No, not yet. You can do that. Okay. So, yeah, there are some plugins for Wicket that can give you the back and forth between HTML and Java side, but not for Scala yet. Just for Java, just for pure Java and Wicket projects. I think it integrates with NetBeans, and there's another one for Eclipse, but I think the NetBeans one is better. Okay, so I just keep going developing all the things that are on the HTML and create components on the server side, like a feedback panel or an email field, and then I make that email field required. In this case, so when no data goes to the server side, it will throw an error message saying, yeah, you forgot to fill something here. The login button uses the function that receives a button, which will be the login button. And then I just get the data from the user object and authenticate on my session. So here's the logic for authenticating. It should be somewhere else, but this is the application that I made a few months ago. I was just trying to make it work. So let's run this code and see what we get using this approach. First, let's start with the HTML that we have here for, let's say, the login HTML. So this is the login page that I'm using. So I can preview it on the browser. Then the developer, if he wants to change the layout, he can just do what he's good at, like CSS. He comes here on the Chrome and makes some different thing, like 30%, or it takes the background off. It makes a few changes. And then, yeah, maybe it's okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my page on login or CSS and makes the changes. But the thing is, the page that he modified is actually the same page that will be used by Wicket on the runtime. So let me show you group birthday. I just come here and call Maven that will come up with the embedded GlassFish plugin and start the program. One of the things that I still have to come up with is some way to modify the HTML, and then I can preview on runtime, like the page or the server-side code as well, just like a hot deployment. Okay, so I just create an account. Thank you for registering. Then you can all sign in. So there's the page. This is the lists page. So this is the running page, And let me show you the template page. So here's the template page that the designer gave to me. So I put all the code that I wanted for server side, for instance, like Wicket ID. There they are. And the same HTML, like this one, is being used here on GlassFish. So again, about Gamboa, going back to Gamboa, how we create a project and what we get when we do that. So Gamboa is actually an archetype from Maven. So when we run the archetype generate code, like this one, it's full of parameters, but if you run this, it will create a sample project that will already come with the Java EE integration between Scala, Wicket, with a data source that is on memory on GlassFish. It will have a mail session for you, so you can send emails, the velocity integration. It will also come with a Twitter bootstrap layout, and will come with a login page, so you can already have the login feature if you need. Let me open the page. Oops. My project at layout at index.html. So this is the page, the index page. So in this case, we cannot preview it because the developer modified the HTML in a way that it doesn't come with any CSS, because it's a composite page, one page extending another page. So that's why you see on the code here the Wicket extend. So in this particular case, this is a feature of Wicket. I can break all my layout into pieces of pages, like templating. So here I have my layout. So I have my base page, I have my layout page, and then I have my actual pages, like index and login. So if I open base page, then I have all the HTML from the Twitter bootstrap, like the CSS references and the JavaScript. So what I can do to get a preview back in this case is to just move this part of the code into outside the extend here. See, there's the change. And also the other part here. There you go. So now I have the actual layout of the page. So then I can preview. But the thing is that all that HTML outside the Wicket extend will be ignored by the framework on runtime. So I can do a lot of things. Dreamweaver, for instance, has a feature where you can lock parts of your page, so then you can modify your layout, and then it will deal with all the templating from pages that they look the same. So you can take advantage of that in this case. Let me do this. Now I have to show you this page running. So what we get when we do this is a project able to start coding from top down. We can just get all the HTML and CSS from the designer and throw into the layout folder and then start coding on top of that layout. And there you go. So we have this kind of this code here that we can start using for, let's say, the login page is just a login with form. The form is a page with fields and a button. And I have the full form that it enables me to create an account. Let me show you this running. So this is the Gamboa project running. I have the login field form. I can just create an account here. It will create in a database in memory. Oops, sorry. The email is not working in this network. I cannot send emails. So let me ignore this. No email here, and just a return here. And okay, so just going back to the slides before I wrap up a few things. So when we think about web development, maybe we should think not about just the features of the web frameworks, but more about the designing process that we have in our company, in our team, with the designers and developers. We maybe should think about will this framework fits, provides me the ability so then my designers will be productive, and as well as my developers, and they will actually work together to build my websites. Or should I just follow what everybody's using? No, maybe you should think about more in a designing process, more and about the type of website as you are doing. So don't think that the framework that you like will be able to do whatever kind of website you want. So maybe we should start thinking about choosing the right web framework for the right website, for the right designing process, for the right team. There are a lot of companies that they give the part of the design of a page to another company, and then they will come with the layout, like a marketing agency or something like that. So maybe you should think about this before thinking, I'm going to choose PHP because I like it. Think that now you have to, you come up with all this page, mixing code, and then your customer says, you know what, I didn't like the layout, can I change it? Yeah, no, because you're going to have to do that all again. So think about this, and next time choosing the framework. I have a few more minutes. So if you guys have any questions, if you want to see more code, yeah.
How would you deal with labels or just on your page? Just with logic. When you have logic on your page, this is a guy who didn't list, and the way you deal with client side. So generate back to server side, you kind of figure out what you do.
Okay. So let's say like hiding a component because someone cannot see it. Okay, in this case, we get to the Wicket framework because all that logic has to be added to the components. For let's say layout, I can have here. I actually have this one. See, I have a page layout, and then when the page is going to be rendered, I'm gonna check if the user is logged in. If he's not, then I'm gonna change the visibility of the login form on the top to false. Actually to true, because looking at the page here, we have two login forms, right? But they are all the same component. First of all, they are all the same component. But second, when I log in, I want to hide that component because they are on the same page. The navigation bar and the login form here on top, they are on the same page.
So when it generates the page, it's path.
Yeah. Yes.
So that wouldn't replace your structure.
No, I actually have that structure on the HTML. So when you open the HTML on the browser, you're gonna see both the navigation panel and the login form. Let me show you here. Java 1, my project at layout at login dot, sorry. So here, so on the HTML, I actually have the component showing up and the navigation bar that should be visible only to signed in users. So I control that on the server side. And if I want to use JavaScript, I can create an HTML like a div this way. I put, let's say, here, layout.html, and I have a div here, div wicket ID equals whatever, and then some script here, and then I can get this, go to layout, assign a container for that, and then I can hide it here. Okay, so I actually connect the server side with any element on the HTML using this approach. The container here, in this case, is the general, the most common abstract way to connect to some element on the HTML. Question, yeah? Okay, let me show you the example on that. The example on that is on group birthday. While it's running, it's starting, I'm going to show you the layout first, and then the code. Group birthday, source, pages, and then I have edit list. Let's see if it's this one. Yes, it's this one. So this page will show a list of items, and then what I do here is create a function that will be run on each element of the list to be visible on the page. So for every element from the database, I create a label for email, a label for birthday name, a link to delete that record or to edit. And then I create another component here that is the pageable list view. So on top of a list, I can page that, but not just the pageable list view, I also need to add another component that will be plugged to the pageable list view that will provide me the navigation, the page navigator feature on top of that list. So here we create an account, we log in, we create a list, bruno.con, save list. Okay, so here we have that list showing up. And this is the navigation of the page, of the pageable list view. Wicket provides a very simple page navigator, but you can customize that. You can add CSS if you want. So let me show you, just add a few items here. So Bruno, oops, not a valid date. So then I have one page here. So when I click the boot button here, for instance, I will come to this part of the code here, that is the edit. So if I want page flow, I just set response page, a new page, the edit item page, which comes to this class that is called item/item. And on top, I get item, and I'm editing Bruno. And the HTML, edit list.html, I have to attach a wicket ID to the list. So where we are here. So here I have a table, and the table will have 4 columns. I have the column for name, the email, and birthday. So this is the list, the actual list that will be iterated through the data coming from the database. In this case, it will be here, the pageable list view. So I can run a list view without paging capabilities, but I can also run the pageable list view. But again, I have to add an extra component for the navigator. They are bound to a model, and on that model you can provide a list, you can provide a pageable list, you can page on the database and just provide chunks of data to the page. But it depends on what you want. You can put the whole list on the memory in the session of the user and just iterate on top of that. Or you can get the parameters using a different component to get the parameter of the page that the user is seeing, so then you can page on the database and just get part of the list. More question? Okay. One thing that people think about Wicket is that, like I said, the memory, all the state is managed on the user session of the components. And that's why it has those server-side capabilities. That's why it has that. And the first question that comes up is, will my server handle all that memory? Well, there are a lot of websites, e-commerce websites. There are a few in Brazil actually that are using Wicket. And if your developers do a good job, you can actually have thousands and thousands of users, current users, accessing your page, your website, and no memory problems on that. Well, you always have clusters and so on. But the answer is there is no problem unless the developers don't screw up, which can always happen. Yeah.
But does it work then with database-backed session storage if you have a cluster?
Yeah. Well, there are some companies that what they do is they put Terracotta to manage all the session memory in memory. So, yeah, yes, it is possible. Yes. So what you guys can do now is to go to the Gamboa project, get the archetype, and start doing some project to start with the quick start. Wicket also has a quick start archetype that you can play with, and the only thing about Gamboa is actually it is using Scala, which brings to a higher level of coding, but it's a good way to start learning. Okay, if you want to check the Scala DSL for Wicket, it's on GitHub. Wicket stuff, core. A lot of the path is huge, but it's on Wicket stuff /core, and then you go down to JDK 1.6, and then you go to the Scala component. Then you will see the DSL for Scala that is part of the Gamboa project. And then you maybe you're gonna give up on studying Scala after you see all this code. Yeah, well, it's because I've put a format that I can just have one line of code, for each method of the DSL. They are not that big, but yeah, you have implicit, manifest, you have crazy stuff here. I mean, that was the way that I used to learn Scala. So I think it's good to do crazy stuff when you want to learn something like this arrow and this underline. I mean, why God? Why did they come with this? But you got used to it. It's a good language to learn functional programming and lambda expressions. I like a lot. I think it's over now. Yeah. All right. Thank you.